Begin the current Daf, Mesech Yoma Daf Zayin. Begin on the second line down at the top of the Yommi. But the Gemara continues the discussion of the previous Daf regarding if Tumah is Hutra Hibetziba or if it's Tuchuya Hibetziba. Ashes Kozbaz Mekazdik and Necheskut and Entam Daf. Thank you for joining us for today's Daf. Some of the things discussed in today's Daf are, as we said, we had brought up in previous Daf regarding if Tumah is Hutra Hibetziba, is it Tumah permitted, or do we say Tumah Tuchuya Hibetziba? It's just we reject it, we override it for now, but really we try to avoid doing it in the state of Tumah. Let me get into discussion regarding, interesting discussion, when is the tzitz effective to make karbanis brought by Tumah acceptable? We'll explain that the tzitz is meratza on the laws of Tumah, but when is it actually, what state does the tzitz have to be in to be able to be meratza? So Mekitim is a concept we discussed today's example, like we said, is Tumah Huchi B'tzibur, is it Tumah permitted, Tumah Dechuyi B'tzibur, is it we just override if we have to. Shirayim are the leftovers of a carbon which are eaten, which is going to be significant regarding when it comes in the state of Tumah. Tzitz is the plate that the Kohen Gadol wears on his forehead that provides atonement for certain things regarding the Kachim. Pigel is when the Kohen brings the carbon with a machshava of it being brought. Chutz Zmanei, sometimes Pigel means Chutz L'Kaimai. Nicer is when it's left beyond its time. Sometimes it really means when you had a machshava for nicer, which is Chutz Zmanei. And Hesach Hadas is when a person is not paying attention, he's not conscious of the entity that is in front of him. So again, we said in the previous Daf of Machlekes, Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshet. Rav Nachman says Tumah Hutri B'tzibur, it's completely permissible for public abundance. Way the Machlekes is exactly that Beisav, a different Beisav, but you don't have to be stringent. Sheshet says no, Tumah Hutri B'tzibur. It's only set aside for public abundance, only if there's no alternative. If there's no alternative, then it will be permitted, but if there is one, then we're not going to go with that. So as we continue, a number of Sheshet said, no, Manila, where do I know this from? What's my raya? The Tumah is only Dechuya, we only override it, we only set it aside, but it's not totally permissible carte blanche. The time in the Brisa. Brisa says the following halacha. The Kohen was standing and he's sacrificing the Omer offering, which is brought on the second day of Pesach. And as he's holding it, becomes Tameh. So you say, you bring another one. You're not going to bring a carbon that's Tameh. Now, if there's only one, is this one. So Emily, we tell him, be smart and be quiet. Sometimes a smart person is be quiet. And you'll bring this one as the carbon. But yes, one thing is that we see, you see, but if there is another one to take its place, you bring the other. Plus, highest is a carbon tzibah, Tumas Hutri B'tzibur. It's not, it's the chuya. If you can make another one, bring another one. So that's a raya of Rav Sheshet. So Rav Nachman says, no, it's not a raya. You know why? Nachman is the one who holds Tumas Hutri B'tzibur. He says, Medina, I agree, where there's leftovers that have to be eaten, although a carbon tzibur, yes, can be sacrificed in the state of Tumah, no problem, it's Hutra B'tzibur, but it's not eaten in the state of Tumah, as the Gemara says in Pesach and Avayin Zayin Beis. Only exception is carbon Pesach. Even if it can be sacrificed in the state of Tumah, 5 types of karbans, they won't be able to be eaten. Now here we have a mincha that there's a kemitza, which is the omer. I agree, of course, it has to be done in the state of Tara, so that you could be able to eat the shirayim. But regarding the avoida, no, avoida you don't have to. You could do it with tumah, but the problem is, what are you going to do with the shirayim? So therefore, it's not a raya tumah dechuya b'tzibur, really it's hutra, and you could do that way, no problem. The only problem is, what do you do with the shirayim? You're not going to be able to eat it because you can't eat it in the state of tumah, and therefore, that's why the halacha is that you should go ahead and bring another one in its place. Now, basically, the Gemara asks for the following brisa on what Rav Nachman just answered. It says the brisa says hayimakriv minchas par. If someone was sacrificing the flour offering that comes because by karbanis, they would bring minchas nesachim that came with the karbanis. So if someone's sacrificing the flour offering that comes with a parim with bulls, ve'elim and rams, zikvasim and lambs, v'nitmas biyadayim, they became tamei. Something happened, whatever, and everything became tamei. So okay, bring new menachas. Now v'mensham elehi. Now, if you don't find any others prepared over there that you could be, that's available. So I'm going to tell them, have a pikesh, which like, okay, be smart, just be quiet, just go ahead and bring it in the state of Tumah. But my love says the Gemara, aren't we talking about parim el mukvasim dechag? When do you have parim and el mukvasim? You have it on Yom Tiv, which those are karbanas sibur, and they have a set time. And minchas nisachim are deicha Tumah, because it's a carbon of a tzibur, and these are the libation menachis that are poured on the mizbech, the flour and the oil. And what are you saying? That if it became tamei, mevin acheres tachta. Why are you bringing another one to take it? These are not like menachas that you said before that you take a kmitza like by the omer and you eat the rest. You told me, you gave me an answer, teretz. You said, no, really, Hutra, but what are you going to do? You have to be able to eat it. You don't eat these menachas. The mechlas nesachim was the whole thing was poured on the mizbeach. It was all burnt. So what's your teretz now? What are you going to say now? Why are you saying mevin naches tachta? Why do you have to bring another one? Tova Hutra b'tzibur. And eating? There's no eating. Not eating these menachas anyway. So it says the Yoma Daf, I'm not going to tell you lie. No. No, yeah, that's the avodah. That's the I hear you. Yeah, it's the kayin that he can't eat it in the state of tumah. Yeah, good question. But says the about light. No, it's not a difficulty. Says Rav Nachman, who is defending his approach to tumah hutri b'tzibur. When we're talking about these parim and elim and kvasim, it's not on the yom tov. Parim refers specifically to para avodah zara. The bull the tzibur brings for doing avodah zara, that's a karban ayla. And also requires nesachim, as it says in Parashat B'Shalach. But, so wait a second, if it's that of a tzibur, so why don't you say that you could bring it in the state of tumah? So there actually are certain qualifications, even for a karban tzibur, to have this halachic status of being permitted to do it in the state of tumah. Avagav the tzibur, although it's a karban tzibur, but kiven de lekivei leizman, since it doesn't have a set time, you don't have to do it today. You have to bring it. The tzibur has to bring a carbon for doing avodah zara since it doesn't have a set time. So madrinan. So therefore, we go around and we try to find. In other words, we're not going to do it right now. We're going to try to find an ability to do it in the state of tahara. Now, Tais actually discusses. He says that why do we say if you don't find, have a bekech v'shtoik, be quiet and be silent, just bring in the state of tumah. So he says it's not because tumah is dechuy b'tzibur. Because such a carbon that doesn't have a set time is not Deicha Shabbos, and so is not Deicha Tumah. As the Gemara says later on Daf Nun and Aleph. Whatever does not have a set time, it's not Deicha Shabbos or Tumah, even though it's a carbon tzibur. So then wait a second. So I understand why you tell me initially you have to go around and try to find a replacement, but why do you bring in a state of Tumah? That's actually, says Taisus, because of the ritzui of the tzitz. And that's only the Tumah of the carbon that the tzitz meratzah. But the Tumas HaGuf of the Kahanim, you're right, we wouldn't override that regarding this carbon of the power of Avodah Zarah because it's totally considered like a carbon yachid. Meaning, it's not a carbon yachid, it's a carbon to the tzibur. We don't give it that status of a carbon tzibur unless it's a carbon of the tzibur and it has a set time. This doesn't have a set time, so we don't override Tumah. What do you mean override Tumah? You just told me that if have a pekeh l'shteg, we say we can't find a replacement, we tell them to be quiet and just bring it. That's because of the tzitz is going to be rats on it. But that's not coming from the halacha of tumah, dechuy, or hutra hibitzibur. Those are two different halachas. One is in general, what happens if, let's say, you weren't supposed to do in the state of tumah and you did it? The tzitz is meratza. It appears as we're going to shortly learn about that. And therefore, that's this halacha about the power of the zar, but not coming from the halachas of tumah, hutra hibitzibur, or dechuy hibitzibur. It's not a raya dechuy hibitzibur, because if it's hutra, then why do you have to try to find a placement? It's not considered carbon tzibur. I mean, it's carbon by the zar. Yeah, but it doesn't have a set time. So the set time does not have that qualification in those leniencies of the heter that it has for tumah and tzibur. And what's the case of elim? The rams. It's not referring to the rams of the Yom Tovim. It's be'ela shel Aaron. We're talking about the ram that Aaron HaKohen would bring on Yom Kippur. The avig of the kivil zman. Here it has the other variable. Even though it has a set time, but keeping the yachidhu, since it's an individual bringing it, that of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol. So here also we try to find. Meaning, what do you mean? I said tumah hutra b'tzibur. What are you trying to find a replacement? It's not a regular carbon tzibur because it's his own private aisle that he's bringing. Now, Taisa points out, most definitely, here he's saying the actual inverse of what he said in the previous Taises. The carbon of Aaron is most definitely considered carbon tzibur, where it overrides Shabbos and overrides tumah, and even the tumah of the kohen himself. However, what's interesting is, but the heter of tumah for this quote-unquote carbon tzibur of the aisle of Aaron is only dechuya. Because, what do you mean? I thought of not tumah hutra b'tzibur. Yeah, but since a yachid is bringing it, so therefore we give it like a lesser of a level. Because we have in the previous daf, we said that it's considered carbon tzibur. We said it's carbon tzibur, and it is. And therefore it's going to be deicha Shabbos and tumah. But lamaisa, if we can find a replacement, we're going to try to find a replacement. You say tumah hutra? Yeah, it's not a regular carbon tzibur. It is, but it's not because the lamaisa yachid is bringing it. And what's the case of kvass and that of the lambs? We're talking about Bekeres Ablam Omer. We're talking about the lamb that comes with the carbon oim on the second day of Pesach. The pasuk says, "B'yikuch of Gimel, v'asisem le'yimanifchem." As you're going to do on the day that you bring the omer, you're going to bring a lamb. Now, those minchas kavasim, the menachas that we're saying that comes with the kavasim, are actually not the minchas nesachim that comes with the kavasim, because that is totally burnt on the mizbeach. We're talking about the minchas ha'imur itself that comes with the kavasim. Oh, that you take a fistful of the barley offering, the ikishirayim lachila, where there's leftovers that have to be eaten. I told you, Nachman said, I already told you before, although I hold Tumah Hutcha B'tzibur, but not something that has to be eaten. Something that has to be eaten, you can't do in the state of Tumah. So that's why, Parim, Elam, and Kvasim, the reason why you say, try to find the replacement, besides the replacement, I thought Tumah Hutcha B'tzibur. No, these are not regular Karbanas Tzibur. Either because it doesn't have a set time, or because it's not a regular Karban Tzibur, it's really a Yachad that's bringing it, or because there's Shirayim. And Shirayim doesn't have the heter of Achila in the state of Tumah. It's only to do that way in the state of Tumah. So that's why it's not difficult on Rav Nachman. But the Gemara continues asking on Rav Nachman from the following brayso. Dam shenitma was zerakai. If blood became tamei, the blood of a carbon, and they threw it anyway on the mizbeach. So if it was done b'shegig, hortz, if it was done by mistake, so the tzitz is going to be meratz, it's going to make it like it was good. It went through. But meisel hortz, he did deliberately, it's not going to be considered as appeasement. Now, as Rashi points out, although the tzitz is meratza, the rabbis penalize that the meat should not be eaten. But of course, the Bible of course get a kapara, because we're not going to want you to bring a new carbon to bring chulin to the azar, because biblically it is valid. But one thing we see is that, and this is the way Rashi explains it, place has an arichas, but that obviously it's not heter, because if it was heter, then why do you need the tzitz for? Even b'meisir should be permitted. Taisa goes to arichas. Why is it difficult? Mandama heter should be mandam. Question mandama duchiyah too. Also says machalik regarding what's becoming tummy, if the meat is becoming tummy or the blood's becoming tummy. But be that as it may, it's more of a question. It's definitely a difficulty on the manda amar of tumah hutra hibetzibur. If tumah hutra hibetzibur, why are you saying that you? Why are you saying like hurtza by b'mezid? Why are you saying that you need even the ritza that sits? What ritza? Tumah, who cares? Tumah is hutra. Says Gemara, it's not difficult. That price is tumah by yach. Yach doesn't have this heter. So you need the ritza that sits, and we're telling you the ritza that sits is only going to be b'shayki, but by b'mezid you don't get the ritza. The Gemara says Tashma a similar question, not like Rav Nachman, for the following brayso. Mahat tzitz meratza. Regarding what is the tzitz going to provide appeasement for? Where it says in the pasuk v'nosar nesabena kadishim that aren't going to carry the sin of the kadishim, where it's going to create a ritza with the bailam. Regarding what is the tzitz going to work for? Aladam, regarding the blood, valabasar, or the meat, valachilim, and the fats, which are things that are sacrificed in mizbech or eaten. Shanit, if they became tamei, bein b'shegi, bein made whether by mistake, whether deliberately, where Tosha goes through bringing the Gemara elsewhere that says, wait a second, didn't you just say a second ago it's only by shegi, not by mezid? That's the Gemara asked that question elsewhere. But whether by mistake, but mezid, whether deliberately, bein this, whether against your control, bein b'rotzen, whether willingly, which Rashi just points out that really rotzen is the same as mezid. It's just that the contrast of the antonyms of that of regarding shagig and einus, those are different. So we're just contrasting the two, but really rotzen and mezid is the same thing. But bein b'yachad, bein b'tzibah, whether an individual, whether b'tzibah, essentially whatever the circumstances are, the halacha is that you're going to have the appeasement of the tzitz being meratza on any tumah that happened. Now, from the fact that you need the tzitz to be meratza, obviously the halachas of tumah b'tzibur is not hutra. Because you tell me bein b'tzibur regarding the tumah, whatever the tumah is, no matter how it came, you're going to have the ritzui. So but if you hold that tumah is hutra b'tzibur, lama li l'ritzui. What do I need a ritzui? What size ritzui? I don't need your tayvit. I don't need a ritzui. It's hutra. It's permitted. Now Rashi just points out, if you're saying that bein b'yachad, bein b'tzibur, what is the difference between the carbon yachad and the carbon tzibur? A yachid, the tumah of the guf, of the body of the kohen, is not. We're not deicha that. The tzitz namaratz on the tumah haguf. In contrast, by the tzibur, even the tumah haguf, let's say if the kohen is tummy, even that is going to be hutra, not through the tzitz. But again, one thing we see is that from the fact that we needed that the meat and the emurim, that when it's b'tzibur, we need the tzitzim and meratza. So obviously we can infer that the tumas haguf. This is what's interesting. These are actually two different halachas. One's the tzitz being meratza, which is the tumah of the carbon, and we're talking about tumas haguf of the kahana being tamei, of the people being tamei regarding tumah hutra or hutcha. But the way Rashi explains the Gemara's question is, obviously, that even the tumah of their bodies was only with great difficulty that we permitted it. And as long as you could do it in the state of tahara, we're going to try to do it, because if it was totally hutra, then why would you even need the tzitzim miratza by the karbanas, by the meat itself? On the fact that you need tzitzim on the miratza, on the meat, which that applies by yacha too, but this that we're allowing even the bodies by bitzibur, that also sounds like it would be b'di'evid, and not like a chila, but if your whole hutra, why do you need these ritzus? So Rav Nachman, he says, you're right. Kikatani at tzitz miratza, when do we say in this brisa that the tzitz is miratza? That's going on the yachid, that's going on the case of bein b'yachid. This that it says bein b'tzibur wasn't going on the halacha of the tzitz being miratza, that was going on the fact that it's kosher. That bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur is going to be kosher, but not through the tzitz, rather through the hutra, but not through the tzitz. And therefore, you're right, it's not difficult under Rav Nachman. Over one, you could actually give another answer. And that is, afilatema b'tzibur, you could even say that the ritzui tzitz is going even on the case of tzibur. Now, Bahanach, we're talking about those types of karbanas, they don't have a set time, which, like we said, there you're not deichet tumah, and that's what we said, that the tzitz has to be miratza on those tumas, even those of b'tzibur. Now, ask Meisvei, now the Gemara asks on Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes held that tumah is dechuyehi b'tzibur. So the Gemara now has several questions on his opinion. We learned the brayso that quotes the pasuk in Shemais. The pasuk says, "V'nasa Aaron es avoyna kadashim," that Aaron will carry the sins of the karbanas. Now, chiyeza avon hu naisei. What sin does Aaron HaKohen carry and atone for? Meaning that if it's going to be a sin in one of the karbanas, that the tzitz that he wears, Kohen Gadol, that's Aaron's mimeratza, that's going to be kosher. The brayso goes through like this. Im oven pigel, if you think to say that, although classically, and today's has a whole discussion on this, but the way Rashi explains, although classically pigel usually means a machshava chutz zmanai, here Rashi says it means a machshava chutz l'mkaimai. Where we find that that's called pigel, as the Gemara says in Zvachim Daf Chav Chesam and Aleph. So if you think that the kohen had a machshava doing the avodah that it should be eaten beyond its place, the pasuk already says in Devarim that lo yiratze, that it's not a vayikra, that lo yiratze, it says pigel hu lo yiratze, which the Gemara in Zvachim explains talking about chutz l'mkaimai, that it's not going to be merutze. It said obviously it's the tzitz is not going to work. Vim avayin, and if it's regarding the sin of having a thought, this is unlike usually where nicer usually says it's leftover. Here Rashi translated means if he had a thought of nicer, which he had in mind when he slaughtered it, that it should be eaten beyond its zman, which is really what we normally call pigel. The pasuk says miyikol lo yechashiv. It says hamakabes lo yechashiv, which the Gemara explains over there to what machshavas chutz zman. So you can't say that the tzitz is miratza. Oh, kohen at ketin mit pigel mit chutz zman. Oh, don't worry, the tzitz miratza. You can't. The pasuk says explicitly lo yiratza lo yechashiv. It's not going to work. So therefore, it continues the brayso to continue with base. So obviously you're not left with that many options. Ain't a nice oven tumah. That obviously it's only carrying the sin of a carbon became tummy, which has a whole discussion. So wait a second, why do you need to find reasonings for, as we're about to say, why isn't it the only option left? But be that as it may, the Bryce is coming to explain now, why did we pick that one to be lenient? If we find other leniencies, that's why we're going to be lenient. Unlike that of Pigel and unlike that of Chutz M'Kaimai, we find leniencies already with laws of Tamah, where it was Hutra for the Tzibur, excluding from what usually applies as a prohibition by an individual, where we know that we could do the karbanis of a Tzibur in the state of Tamah. So we make another leniency that the Tzitz will be miratza even by karban of a Yachid. So just like by Tzibur, we allow it, so by Yachid, where we don't allow it, but okay, if the Tzitz is miratza on something, it will be on that laws of Tamah. One thing we see is that the Brayso says the tumah hutra hi b'tzibur, so obviously it's a heter and not just a dichri. B'kash Rashay, different conversation. It says the tumah is only we override and that it's not permitted. Says the Gemara, you're right. This Brayso is not like him, but Tatnoi, it's a machlekes tanoim. The Tanya, interesting machlekes tanoim. Learn the Brayso that sits the forehead plate that the Kohen Gadol would wear. The first mandam says whether it's on his forehead of the Kohen Gadol when the tumah happens of the carbon, whether it's not on his forehead, the tzitz is always meratza. The Reb Shimon, it doesn't have to be on he doesn't have to be wearing it in the moment when the tragedy happened. He says no, like the if it's on his forehead, it's meratza. If it's not on his forehead, it's not going to be meratza. So Reb Shimon says, wait a second, Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim, I can prove that you're wrong. The Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim she'ena de'al mitzvah. He's not wearing on his forehead when it happens, because what is he doing in the avodah, in the kachim, at Geit Harayin, it doesn't wear the big days of. He's not wearing the tzitz. umeratza, and yet it's meratza. So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, leave alone the Karban Kippurim, shetuma hutrale b'tzibur. All the Karbanos he's doing in Kippurim are all Karbanos Tzibur. And you don't need to have a ritzui from the tzitz because it's all totally mutter. So wait, so you see that Rabbi Yehuda holds hutra. That's why it's not difficult. How is there going to be a ritzui for the tumah on Yom Kippurim? He's not wearing it, and I hold it has to be wearing it. Oh, that's because hutra. Mechlal the Rabbi Shimon saw the inference is, what does Rabbi Shimon hold? Obviously, tumah dechuyi. Obviously, he holds that tumah we only set it aside, and that you need the tzitz to be meratza, and that's his proof that obviously the ritza tzitz works even when he's not wearing it, because that was his raya. If it's hutra, it wouldn't be a raya. Obviously, he holds tumah dechuyi, and that's the machlekes tanam that we have if the tumah is dechuyi or if it's hutra. Now, parenthetically, once we introduce this machlekes regarding the ritza the tzitz, so Amabai, he explains the machlekes. He says, "Benishba tzitz, if the tzitz is broken, the kulam lekligid, no one's going to disagree. The limitatza, it's not going to provide an atonement because it's not in service, it's not functioning, it's broken. Keep leaking this machlekes that we had, if it has to be on this forward or not, is the totally b'sich that's hanging on the peg. Yehuda he held the pasuk says in Shemois al metzach v'nasa. There's a pasuk in Shemois Chavches that says al metzach Aaron should be on the forehead of Aaron. V'nasa Aaron is on the kosher. Aaron's going to carry this into the kosher. It sounds like that when it's on his forehead al metzach, then it's provide for atonement. But if it's not, it's not. Rabbi Shimon Sabi held no. The end of the pasuk says tamid l'ratzin is going to constantly be as the appeasement of Hashem. My tamid. What does it mean tamid? So he explains. Even if you think to say, oh, meaning because he's always wearing it on his forehead, is that even possible? Mila boy Mila basically doesn't have to go into the lavatory, or Mila boy Mem doesn't have to take a nap, and you can't wear that when you're sleeping. Ela rather Tamim Miratza, who obviously is always going to be in appeasement even when it's not on his forehead. So the Gemara asks, what does he do? Haksiv Tamid, it says constantly, what does he do with that pasuk? Says the Gemara, who Tamid, a famous teaching that we do every single day when we're wearing our tefillin. The halacha is shleisiyach daitimen. What does it mean tamid? Tamid to say he always has to be thinking about it, and that is k'derabba bar Avuna. Rabbi Avuna says chayv adam lamashmish b'tefillah b'chol shah v'shah. Person has to always be touching his tefillin at all moments, always touching on his tefillin. Why? Kavachayim mitzitz. The kavachayim from the tzitz. What's the kavachayim? Umatzitz, as we continue to have chesed alf. Shein nebai ela askar achas. Only has one name of Hashem. The Torah says al netzchei tamid, it always has to be on his forehead, meaning he's always got to be conscious and thinking about it. Shleisich that means he's not supposed to remove his thoughts from it. So tefillin, sheyesh ben askar is hard, but there's so many names of God. Allah has kama v'kama, all the more so that a person has to be thinking about it and touching it all the time. Now, the Gemara says Rabbi Shimon, that he says tamid miratzim, that the karban tamid is miratzi even when it's not on his forehead. But what does he do with the pasuk of Rabbi Yehuda book? Siv al metzach v'nasa. That pasuk sounds like Rabbi Yehuda. Only when it's on his forehead he carries this in. So the Gemara that's come and tell us where he's supposed to put it. But not that it's only going to be when he's wearing it. But then the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda, like where does he know that that's the place to put it? If that's just telling us that when it's on, it's going to be atoning. So the Gemara al metzach. It says at the end of the pasuk again the words al metzach. That's going to tell you on its forehead. So it says the Gemara, so why he has now an extra pasuk? What does he do with that? So the Gemara, you're right. So al metzach v'nasa mayod. We're back to the question. If he's using al metzach to tell where you put it, so what does he do with al metzach v'nasa? It sounds like only when he's wearing he's going to atone. So Amalchai would tell you no. Ro la metzach maratza. It's coming to tell you that it has to be fit to be on his forehead. Then it's going to be provided atonement. She'in ro la metzach is not fit for it. If it's broken. Then it's not going to provide atonement. Lafuki nishbat tzitz, excluding if it's broken to limaratza. So the Gemara goes back to Rabbi Yehuda. Nishbat tzitz, but no, when does he know that halacha is broken? He doesn't have extra pasuk for that. So the Gemara nafkali metzach metzchai. The pasuk could have said not al metzchai, could have said al metzach because we know who we're talking about. The extra vav comes to tell you this drasha that it has to be fit on his forehead and not if it's broken. But Rabbi Shimon metzach metzchai, he doesn't see that as a critical diuk, as a differentiation between metzach and metzcha, and therefore that's where it evens out at the end of the day all these different limudim from the different terminologies here in the pasuk. Something that's discussed in today's daf in Yoma Daf Zayin. We brought rayas that the Torah is dechuyi b'tzibur. What was the raya? Raya number one was from the minchas ha'omer that became tummy. We said, okay, became tummy when you're trying to do it, you bring another one in its place. Why bring another one in place? I tumah hudra b'tziba. Obviously, dechuya like Rav Sheshes. No, Rav Nachman says no. I agree that when there's shirayim to be eaten, that doesn't help Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur, because Hutra is only regarding the Avodah, but regarding the eating, that doesn't help. And what's with regarding the minchas of the karbanos, that you say you have to bring others in place of it, which the Gemara assumes that means to say from the Chag, which those are minchas nesachim, which those don't have any shirayim. So why over there do you say, okay, bring an andra, why have to bring an andra? Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Oh no, says the Gemara, no. The param elam and the kvasim, the param is referring to that of Avodah Zarah, which doesn't have a set time. That doesn't have the qualification of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. It has to have a set time. Additionally, the elam is that of Aaron, where although it quote unquote comes in tzibur, but l'mais it's being brought by Yachid. And the kvasim is that which comes with the Eimer, and it's the Eimer offering, which that has shirayim, and therefore those don't have the halachas of Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur, and therefore Reb Nachman would agree in these cases that you have to try to find a replacement. Now, what's with the fact of blood that we said that requires a ritzui? What do you mean? Why does it require ritzui? I thought Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Yes, Tumah by Yachid. Or you could say Tumah B'Tzibur, but again, it's Tumah those kavanas that don't have a set time, and there even Rav Nachman agrees that you don't say Tumah Hutra B'Tzibur. Now, but l'mais the Gemara concluded that we found the brayta not like Rav Sheshes, that we see Tumah is Hutra B'Tzibur. So the Gemara says you're right. It's machlekes tanoim if Tumah is Hutra or duchli. What's the machlekes? So machlekes if the tzitz meratz specifically when the kohen gadol is on his forehead or not. Now, what do you do with kohen gadol on Yom Kippurim when it's not on his forehead? You see, must be that it works that even when it's not on his forehead. Now that mandama holds that Tumah is duchli. The other mandama holds no, it's not a riot. Kumi only works when it's on his forehead. But in Yom Kippurim and all Kabbalah Tzibur, they're Tumah's Hutra, so you don't need to have the Ritzah that sits. It's working without the Ritzah that sits. Now, the Machlekes is only if it's hanging on a peg. If it's broken, everyone agrees it's not going to work. And the Machlekes was regarding how we translate the pasuk Al Metzach Benasa, and it says Tamar L'Ratzon. So Rabbi Yehuda sounds like Al Metzach Benasa, sounds like it's only when he's wearing it. Rabbi Shimon says, yeah, but it says Tamar L'Ratzon, sounds like it's always going to work, even when it's not on his forehead. So that's how he learns it. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, the pasuk Tamar L'Ratzon is telling you that you should not be Masiach Das from it, which from that's where we learn that the Kabbalah Tefillin that has many askars, and for sure you're not supposed to remove your consciousness from it, and therefore that's why we always are constantly touching it. And then the Gemara concluded regarding, so what do you do with the drashas of, let's say, Metzach V'Nosa? So it says, like, V'yolei Makayim, that's what he says, coming to tell the place. I would know from the end of the pasuk, so it says, you're right, it has to tell you that if it's Nishbar, that it has to be at least a row to be on his Metzach, which he learns from Mitzchay, and instead of Metzach, and he doesn't hold a Mitzchay. That's how they even out how they learn up the drashas in the pasuk, if it's going to work specifically when it's on his forehead, or even when it's not on his forehead, like Shimon says, Tomit L'Ratzon. Thank you to any time for hosting us.